Good afternoon and welcome on the Sunset Safari. What a fantastic way to start. Lovely little breeding herd of ellies here at the Gallagher waterhole. There's actually a whole bigger herd right behind us that are spread out through the bush that have finished drinking and started feeding. My name is Brent Smith and I'm going to be one of your guides for the next few hours. I have Andrew, who's also known as the Art Fark, on camera with me this evening, and on the other vehicle will be Jamie and Wiem. And in final control we have Tara and Kirsty. So what a great way to start. We are live sitting next to a herd of African elephants. And this is a little pumped waterhole in front of the lodge of Gallagher. If we have a close look there, there are quite a few numerous waterholes around, but elephants, if they have a choice, will drink nice clean fresh water. And you can actually see this cow playing and taking water out of where that water is being filled from. Now, elephants will definitely drink very muddy, dirty water, but where they have the choice, they will go for much nicer, more fresh water. You hear all the slurping and splashing. And notice they'll flick water all over the place. Particularly behind the ears is a very popular spot. Obviously, there's a huge amount of blood vessels in the ears, and that's one of the elephants' cooling mechanisms. So they'll often spray water behind the ears, and it'll help aid the cooling process when it's very hot. And then, even though the bush looks very, very green at the moment, it's quite dry. So these little pumped water holes are really, really great places to find game, especially early in the afternoon while it's still quite hot. And elephants do like to spend this time of the day playing in the water. And we're not the only ones watching these elephants. Tanda Kile, who's our camp chef, I'm going to get her to say hello to you now shortly. She is watching from the deck in front of the Gallagher camp. Tandi, say hello. There's Tandi, our camp chef, waving hello and enjoying a good afternoon watching elephants. There you can see this one walking past us here has sprayed quite a lot of water and mud behind the ears to help with that cooling process. And now there's quite a stiff wind, which will help. So from elephants in the water, off to Jamie with elephants in the mud.
Good afternoon, everybody, and what an elephant-filled day we have had here on Djuma. Wiem and myself are just sitting at Treehouse Dam, where there is some intensive mud bathing going on. They are having an absolute ball in the mud. And have a close look at that female. You might see something interesting around her neck. Have a much fun they're having. I'm going to, in a moment, reposition so that VM can not have to shoot straight into the sun. But there, look at that. That is a tracking collar. Very, very interesting. First one that I've seen while I've been doing drives for WildEarth, and presumably placed on by some form of research group to follow the movements and to track the movements. And chances are, with that kind of collar, it's going to be one that provides both a radio frequency, so they can be tracked with telemetry kits, as well as a GPS system that will send GPS updates about twice a day. Oh, male coming in, throwing his weight around. Young bull. Oh, what a wonderful time they are having. Okay, let's reposition quickly now that he's through, so we can get a bit closer and see these guys having a wonderful time. Oh, they're going to move off. Let's see if we can get a view of our female's face. Unfortunately, they didn't stick around as long as I was hoping they would. They've already moved off. Let's try and get there fairly quickly. But keep your eyes peeled. Take screenshots of this female. It should be very easy to identify with that collar. You say you saw a giraffe? Yeah. Okay. We'll come to the giraffe in a moment. Oh, it's all happening at Treehouse Dam. No, Ellies, wait, come back. Enjoy your mud some more. Oh dear, unfortunately they're heading into the drainage line. That was very short-lived, that mud bath, but just a perfect way to be keeping themselves cool on a hot afternoon on Juma. But very interesting to see a female with a collar. And I'm sure some of the regular viewers might have seen elephants before with collars. And it's a great way for researchers, if they really want to intensely study the movements of one herd, and they'll usually either put it on the matriarch or a high-ranking female. In this case, it looks like the matriarch just purely by her size. Off they go. Well, that was fairly short-lived. I was hoping they were going to spend a bit more time in the mud. However, I believe that Brent's elephant herd is still around and drinking at Gallagher Waterhole. So let's head back across to him, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
So while you're with Jamie, a few more elephants have joined. So a little bit more splishing and splashing, and also a little bit of dust bathing happening right next to us there. And again, that also helps with cooling. Protection from the sun and from a few of the insects out here. So guys, just going to be on the game drive radio for a second. Afternoon tax, there's a nice clump of Ndlovu at Gallagher Waterhole. Copy. During the day I did hear some Nongo alarm calls in this area, but I haven't seen any Nkonzo or anything, but there's lots of Ndlovu sign here, so they could have walked over it. Sorry about that, folks. Just having a quick chat with Tax, who's getting mobile out of Juma's other lodge, which is Vuyatela. So isn't this incredible? We're sitting next to a little breeding herd of elephants, and you're seeing this at the exact same time I am. This little boy enjoying a bit of a dust bath. Oh, accidentally got the one behind, but doesn't seem to mind too much. And it looks like this little breeding herd here is keeping another little breeding herd a little bit far away, a little bit away. If we look off to the back behind, there's another breeding herd there. It doesn't look like they've drunk so far. You don't see any of that dark feet and dark trunks that traditionally elephants get after they've been into the water. Oh, and sort of as a signal, some of these guys, two young bulls, got escorted off by this big cow who's about to come into frame from the right. There she is. It's like she wants the dust. There we go. And there's a little one just behind her. Quite sure that's her baby. We're around a year old. Oh. And just judging from his behavior, it is a little boy. You can see he's giving us that elephant stare, head up, making sure he's still close to mom. Looks like he's thirsty, he's about to go in for a drink. He's had some water, now it's time for some milk. Oh, hello. We've got two little boys, one coming behind Andrew and one coming up to the front. No, don't be cheeky, I'm watching you. Oh, this is actually a little girl, the one behind me is a little boy. They sort of seem to simultaneously time their passing on either side of us. And she just looks a little bit curious. She's lifting her trunk, she's actually smelling us. You can see as she lifts her trunk like that. There you go, moving off, and she's even still facing her trunk back towards us, having one last sniff, making sure Andrew had a shower today at some point. Oh, this little guy looks like he's going to have some fun in the water there. It's so wonderful to have so many elephant around at the moment. So we've got quite a nice diverse group of ellies here, and I'm just going to ask Andrew to come out a little bit wide for a second. We've got a question from Greg in Pennsylvania, and he'd like to know what's the age range we're looking at here. So we've got quite a nice diverse age. The biggest female here, directly sort of center of shot at the moment, the tallest elephant there. Adult female, once they get over sort of 30ish, quite difficult to say, but I would say probably say mid-30s. And then off to the left, we've got a teenage boy, probably around 15. And then coming back, well, the little guy right at the back there is probably just over a year old, can't really fit under mom's belly anymore. Definitely a little boy. And then directly behind this big female who's about to disappear. Oh, we've got that young bull, little teenager, being very teenagerish behind us. You never want to let elephants get too close, and all it takes is a little simple tap on the side of the vehicle just to let them know. And you don't want to encourage any bad habits like putting trunks into vehicles and things like that, but here we've got a nice sort of line of elephants disappearing up in front. So that one directly behind the female, probably about 7 or 8 years old. Coming back, we've got a 2-year-old, probably about a 4-year-old, and then remaining back at the water hole once this parade of elephants has disappeared off into the bush. We've still got a few left, and we've got about probably a 10-year-old little bull, the first one on the right. And then again another, and then 2 adult females and a young female, probably 6 years old in between. So probably ranging from 40 to about a year old. So, and you notice that the ellies pick up quite a lot of water into their trunks, and they use that to drink. And Wanda in Kentucky is wondering how they don't get any of that water in their lungs. Oh, yeah, scratch. Trunk, such a versatile thing. Well, Wanda, the same as we would if we went swimming in the water. A nose is evolved, so they are able to block it. So when they inhale all that water into their nose, they will just block the section that goes all the way through to their lungs, and that will stop them getting water into their lungs. So we've been quite lucky while we've been quite close here. We've heard some elephant rumbles, and that's a wonderful low. But how we found these elephants is actually heard them trumpeting. And Morning Glory is wondering where the different sounds come from. That low rumble will come from the mouth, whereas the trumpeting will come from the nose. And also they do scream, sort of incredibly loud noises. And those will also come from the mouth, and sometimes a combination of mouth and trunk. And for those of you who might be a bit new to the live drives, and I know the old timers will have heard me say this a few times, but very interesting, the Jurassic Park movies, a lot of the dinosaur noises are actually elephant noises, and they are just slowed down to sound even more scary. So very interesting. Hollywood uses slowed down elephant rumbles, screams and trumpets to emulate what possibly the noises dinosaurs would have made. We've got some new arrivals, and you can see how happy they are to be arriving here. So, it's a wonderful thing about sitting quietly at a waterhole like this. And so far we've had a few different groups of elephants come through. And You can notice the water is being pumped. I'm just going to get Andrew to pop the camera down on it quickly. You can see this little stream that elephant's completely covering with its trunk. And curious ones notice that they seem to prefer drinking from there and seem to try to pull the water pipe out. She wonders why this is. Well, elephants are quite intelligent. They have worked out that is the source of the clean water. Although elephants will drink the absolute most disgusting water when there isn't clean water available, if they have a choice, they will go for that. So quite often when they're trying to pull up water pipes, it is to get to that nice clean water. So these ellies are on their way out. I think they're not going to be here for too much longer, so we're going to cross across quickly to Jamie, who's got the only animal in the African bush that is taller than an elephant.
Welcome back, and we are indeed sitting with the only animal taller than an elephant, also shown to be exceptionally more patient in this particular case, and he's now standing once again. And I think he might be a bit of a rest in the afternoon sun. Giraffe do sleep. They do so for sort of short bursts, a couple of minutes at a time, so maybe that's what he's been doing. Even though his eyes have been open, maybe he's just partially shut down his brain and let himself drift off a little bit. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, I did a bit of a rushed introduction with those elephants this afternoon. My name is Jamie, and I have VM on camera with me this morning. And we, along with Brent and Andrew, will be conducting these live safaris. And we're very keen to hear from you, especially if you are a new viewer. Please let us know that you've joined us for the first time. And if you have any questions at all about what it is you're seeing or anything else out here in this magical place, you can get hold of us on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Let's see if this giraffe is going to do anything. As one of my favorite things about giraffe is they're quite content to stand and stare for ages at a time. He really has just been completely stock still. Has not moved. The oxpeckers have been floating up and down on him, around his neck and his shoulders, picking off all of the ticks. But if you are joining us for the first time and you wanted to know how we know it's a boy, well, the start is those nice thick bald ossicones, which is the official name for those horns on the top of his head, sticking up there, as well as the quite prominent bone between his eyes on his forehead. He's also much taller, much stockier than a female giraffe. And then in terms of obvious differences between males and females, it's fairly obvious in giraffe. Interestingly, maybe a little bit of a new fact for viewers, males also have for regular viewers, males also have a slightly straighter back than females do. Females are tilted down a little bit more than males, just to make mounting a bit easier for the males. Because as you can imagine, when your legs are 2 meters long, it can be quite a tricky process. He's a nice light-colored giraffe. He's only just starting to go dark. Mature bull, though. He's reached his full size. Look at him. He's just standing. Now, I know that, just quickly, a big thank you needs to go out to John in Connecticut, who is one of our dedicated zoomies. Now, John, you sent through a screenshot of a giraffe at the Djuma Dam camera earlier. Well, thank you very much for that. We did get it. Not sure if it's the same guy. Probably not. It's just in terms of the distance. We're sitting right in the south at Treehouse Dam. But still, so many different animals that you get to see coming through on that Djuma Dam camera. And the wonderful thing is that you guys who are watching are such a help to us in terms of finding the animals, especially if leopards or lions have come through and you tell us which direction they head off in. It's really awesome information, and it gives us an extra eye on the ground, so to speak, during the times when we are not out on our live safaris. He's still quite happily just standing. And off he goes. Now, we had those elephants earlier coming down to the dam, and they scooted off very quickly. It wasn't actually really in response to us, but it was, I think, in response to that young male who came down and was kind of shoving his way in and being a little bit irritating, a bit boisterous as a young teenage boy. But curious one, you were wondering if that elephant with the collar might be a little bit more wary of people because of her experience with the collaring process. And I don't think so. It depends on when she was collared. Most of the time the darting happens from the air. It's just easier and safer because you don't want the elephants to associate pains in their bottoms and sleepiness and a slightly probably hungover feeling when they wake up. You don't want them to associate that with vehicles, especially in an industry like this that is so determined or so dependent on tourists looking at the animals from vehicles. So she would have been darted from a helicopter, and then at that point she won't remember anything else because she would have been doped with M99. And they've got it down to a very exact science. The scientists who do it are incredibly efficient. They get them lying down, and they'll put the collar on and then get her back up. And I actually happen to come from a reserve where each of the 4 elephant herds were collared. There was one collared female in each herd, and it absolutely had no impact on the way that they responded to people. They were perfectly relaxed, very, very comfortable. The one thing that they don't like is helicopters. Now, we've chatted about our Ellie herd who moved off, and I don't think it's connected to our presence, but I believe that Brent's herd is still around, so let's head across to him for now. Oh, hold on. No, Giraffe's going to drink. He's being interesting. Are you going to go drink at the waterhole? Find out. Slowly approaching the dam. I'm going to loop into a better position. It's interesting how much algae there is at Treehouse Dam. I don't know if that's what's making animals reluctant to stick around. I don't think so. Here he goes, he's going down. Hello, boy. It's okay, you can go and have a drink. Be very interesting to see how he goes about this, or if he is going to drink at all. Looks like he's going to. You can see how much Treehouse Dam has shrunk down. Oop, just poking his head over the dam wall, making sure he's safe. Could be that's why he was so stationary earlier, because giraffe are very vulnerable when they go down to drink. Oh, okay. Changed his mind. a giraffe standing on the damn wall. Maybe he smells something and he can't quite work out exactly where that scent is coming from. As I said, when they do go to drink, they are so much more vulnerable because they've got to get that head right down. And I'm sure many of you, or most of you, will have seen what a giraffe looks like when it drinks. It's got to spread its legs out sideways, duck its head right down. And it can only do that for very limited periods of time, just due to the blood pressure in their neck and the way that their heart and blood flow are structured. If they keep their head down for too long, usually longer even than about 30 seconds, and at that point they actually faint. And it's quite common for, not common, but it does happen that giraffes drown when they go to drink, just because they've left their head down for too long and they pass out, just because the way that their blood system is structured to get that blood all the way up against gravity into the head in their normal sort of upright stance, it's not adapted to leaning forward and keeping the head tilted downward. So it could be that he was just a little bit extra cautious. He's actually decided he's not interested in the water. Might go and have a nibble. No, back the way he came. Excuse me. There's definitely plenty of dust and pollen in the air at the moment. Okay, well, our giraffe has gone back to feeding, but I believe that Brent is still with his herd of elephants who were drinking at the waterhole earlier. So I think let us head back across and see what he's seeing, and I will carry on my mission to go and see if I can follow up on those leopard tracks from this morning. Enjoy your time with Brent. I'll catch up with you soon.
Welcome back, everyone. Only 2 ellies left. The rest have moved off into the surrounding bushveld. And these 2 are really enjoying that fresh water from the pipe. So we've seen a few different groups of ellies move through this waterhole this afternoon. And Timberland's wondering, do they communicate to each other where the water is? I think to a degree they are able to, but with these waterholes in this area have been around for quite some time, I think most of the elephants will actually just know where these waterholes are. And you can hear ellies, trumpeting and shouting at the waterhole or whatnot, and I'm sure if I understood elephant better, I'd be able to tell the difference between chasing other elephants from water, or chasing a lion, or chasing a leopard. And what you'll also find is a lot of these ellies, even though they'll move off in smaller family units, when you do get big congregations of elephants, sort of over 30, 40, 50, you'll find it's related family groups. So they'll all be cousins, and there might be aunts being different, or previously sisters being different matriarchs of the smaller little family nucleuses with sort of a big extended related family group, and they'll tolerate those groups around the water with them more so than a completely unrelated group. So while we're with these ellies here, I just mentioned they do chase off lions. John from California has just tweeted a really incredible picture of a lion atop an elephant carcass that apparently was taken at a reserve, or part of the Sabi Sands, but at one of the lodges to the west of us. And John's asking, how many lions does it take to bring down an elephant? And do I know of any male coalitions that successfully used to hunt elephant? Well, if we have a look at these two elephants as a perfect example here, the one on the left is definitely gettable size for lions. The adult female on the right, unless she was in very bad nick, possibly a little bit too big for them. Not to say that they actually wouldn't try if she was in a by herself or separated or wasn't in the best condition. But generally, a lot of the lions that have hunted elephants and that have been recorded in places, specifically northern Botswana is the most famous place for lions hunting elephants. And I've been lucky enough to see it 3 times. And the shortest time it actually took was about 5.5 hours for them to actually kill the elephant. And the longest was about 8. So what happens is it actually depends. Sometimes the prides don't have to be that big, but I'd say probably a minimum of about 6-7 adult females. Two male lions would be sufficient, although that mega pride and Savuti that used to hunt a lot of elephants, I think were 35 strong. But I mean, you get those huge prides in the Kruger on those big open grasslands and to the east of us, and they're often 35-40 strong, but they do not hunt elephants at all. And one must always remember that animal behavior is quite often area specific rather than species specific. So the same set or same species will behave differently in different areas. Now, the reason those lions in Botswana hunt elephants so readily is because also Botswana has an incredibly large elephant population, and that elephant population moves between the permanent water of the Okavango, Chobe, and the sometimes permanent water of the Savuti and Nohotso and those different areas. And there's a big distance those elephants have to move between food and water, much larger than we find anywhere here in the Lowveld. So sometimes those animals are quite stressed and whatnot, and the lion prides that don't live on the water as such, so specifically the lions that live in sort of the Savuti marsh and the Mapani woodland surrounding those areas, during the dry season there's pretty much nothing but elephants around and the occasional buffalo. So those lions have developed really specialized set of skills to take down those elephants. And also, in my experience in the prides that I watched in northern Botswana regularly, it was the females who taught the males. The males would come in and would never have hunted elephants before, and the females would actually teach those male lions how to hunt elephants. So very, very interesting. And they have never seen a coalition by itself ever attempt to take on an adult or a teenage bull elephant, which is what they normally take. So those young boys hang on the periphery, sort of that 12 to 18 years old. Bless you, Andrew.
Thank you, sir.
Those 12 to 18-year-old bulls that hang on the peripheries and sometimes get pushed out of the breeding herds, and specifically in those really dry times in Botswana where there's quite a lot of pressure on the herd, there even more so those bulls will be pushed further from the herd. So those are the bulls that are targeted, and obviously when there are babies or adults that are towards the end of their life and injured, and that they will also attempt. But it is a serious war of attrition between lions and elephants when it does happen, and it can be very dangerous to view. So as you can imagine, an elephant, incredibly stressed elephant, tearing around trying to get away from lions, doesn't really take notice of a vehicle. So you do have to position yourself quite well and at quite a distance to really see that really, really well. But it is a fascinating thing to watch. These two seem to be the thirstiest elephants in the Lowveld today. Taking serious advantage of that water. So, chatting about lions hunting elephants, Carla's wondering how long it would take to actually finish off an elephant carcass. Well, it depends on the size of the pride, but let's just say a good sized pride, 8 adult lionesses with 2 adult males. You're probably going to find them stationary around that carcass for up to 10 days. depending on the size of the elephant. But a good teenage elephant bull, I would say there's enough meat to keep them there for 10 or so days. And one must remember, lions are not adverse to rotten, maggot-filled meat and will happily eat it if it is available. As we can see, these ellies really taking advantage of that fresh water coming out of the pipe. And obviously a lot of other animals utilize these little pumped water holes. And Dennis from Massachusetts is wondering, have I ever seen any other animals take advantage of this? Yes, hyenas are another great one to take advantage of where the fresh water comes out of. I've seen Inyala do it, kudu, warthog. So most species will, if there is flowing water like it is at the moment, will go straight there and try and get to that clean water. Now these two are really thirsty, and so obviously it can sometimes take quite a lot to pump these little water holes when the elephants get into them while they're being pumped. As we can see, they're taking advantage of it, so I have to run the water pumping for a little bit longer. I'm just going to move the vehicle a little bit so you can have a look at them drinking a little bit better. Have a look how she's putting her trunk right over that inflow. So we do know, obviously, as we talk about these elephants going for the clean water, and quite often you'll find elephants will dig in these dry riverbeds rather than drink out of some of the muddy water holes. Oh, see that big tick, Andrew? Just on his side there. Oh, it's disappearing. Well, it looks like there was a big tick on the side of that elephant. We'll see if we can get another view of it. There you can just see it hanging off just behind her mammary glands. Well, it looks like they're going to move off, so I think we'll do the same. So wasn't that a fantastic way to start out with all those elephants all around us? That was incredible. So we actually heard them from camp before we even got out. And waiting patiently, I think, to come have a drink is this nice big waterbuck bowl. They're probably waiting for those elephants to leave. Quite often elephants will chase other animals away from the waterhole. It'll be interesting to see if he's waited for those elephants to move off, or wait for them to move off a little bit further before attempting to go have a drink. Or possibly he was drinking beforehand and got chased by the elephants. Maybe that was that roar and scream we heard from camp before we got going. Lovely ridges on the horns there. An impressive set of horns to battle for the ladies. Relaxing in the shade, ruminating. Watch even that they stock still in the shade there. There we go. They're constantly alert to other things around. Do you hear anything, Andrew? Can you hear a scrub robin? Do you spot something? What you spotted, Mr. Waterbuck? Let's just go have a quick look. I mean, this is the area, I think, Madame Karula is hiding out in at the moment. And unfortunately, those elephants will obliterate any tracks that were around. Let's have a look. He was giving an impala the evil eye. So, not a leopard, unfortunately, just a male impala. But obviously the movement is what would have caught his eye first, so he would have stared intently at it to make sure, oh, there goes the impala at high speed. It wasn't another predator. I know, a bit disappointing, and then the impala didn't even hang around for a photo, just disappeared. So I'm still convinced Karula is in this area, so I'm going to do one quick loop around, see if there may be some tracks further away. If not, then we'll have to make a new plan. So in case you guys missed it there was that beautiful little bird call we heard while we were watching the waterbuck. As we said a few minutes ago, it is a white-browed scrub robin. And they have actually a huge variety of calls, and they're great mimics of speaking of birds and birds' calls, I can hear them calling. Now let's see if we can spot them in this tree. It's going to be a bit more difficult now that we've got a bit of foliage on the trees, but we can hear some brown-headed parrots squawking in this marula tree, somewhere I would guess in this vicinity. I'm just going to grab my binos and have a look. They don't seem to be moving or making a noise. Oh, maybe you hear them. Oh, no, there we go. Okay, Andrew, come down. Come down a bit more. Okay, zoom in now. Come down slightly. To the right slightly. In there. I think that's where I saw it. Just double check with. It's amazing how they just disappear. Okay, come to the left a little bit. Am I on the right branch? Yes. Yeah, stop. Now this is spot the parrot. So I'm going to get Andrew to drop again slightly to make sure that it's in center frame. Keep coming. Stop. There we go. You got them there?
Got him.
There we go. So hiding behind that little branch there. I wonder what he's eating there. It looks like he's actually might be even eating the nice fresh leaves. Squawking away. Oh, feasting. And check carefully around. There's probably another couple around somewhere else in that marula. Hoping he moves out into the open as he uses those specially adapted zygodactyl feet. I wonder who out there can remember what a zygodactyl foot is, and if you do remember, please send us your answers through to questions at wildearth.tv, or use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. There we go, a little bit more out in the open now. So you see, spotting of the birds is going to become quite a bit more challenging as the trees continue to explode in leaf. Oh, off he goes. Probably also doesn't help that half of the parrot is exactly the same color as the tree, and the other half is quite brown, almost exactly like the branches. Sorry guys, just giving an update on the Game Drive channel. Sorry F, what was that update? Copy, thanks. Could you keep me informed if later it possibly head south? I know you guys were asking about the leopards we see around, and just a little update there. Another update. So 2 of the leopards we haven't seen for an incredibly long time have been found this afternoon just to the east of us. The quarantine male leopard, I know, is a great favorite of many of our viewers, and also Imvula, probably about 800 meters to a kilometer to the east of our boundary. So we're going to continue to search this area for a possible sign of the Queen of Djuma, and while we do that, we're going to send you back across to Jamie, who's going to take you almost down to the ground with some elephants.
Welcome back, And just before we get on to elephant tracks, just have a look at what appears to be coming towards us. This is quite the cold front that seems to be heading in our direction. It's blown in so fast. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this storm to, or at least this front and this heat to break. It's been building for the last 3 or so days, and it's just only starting to really now see it. And I'm wondering, I'm really hoping, obviously not before the end of the sunset safari, but I am really hoping that this is going to be accompanied by some rain. Somehow, I don't think so. I have a funny feeling it's going to be a couple of drops and nothing more, but you just never know. But before we lose our nice light completely as it starts to blow over the sun, we had a really interesting question from Joyce, who wanted to know a little bit about tracking. Now, Joyce wanted to know about the biggest tracks that we see. So a comparison between something like an elephant, then giraffe, rhino, hippo, and then lions and lioness tracks. Now, I'm a very poor artist, but I have picked up the largest of those, which is an elephant track, and I'm going to try and answer Joyce's question to the best of my ability. So let's have a look at what we've got. Grab a stick to draw with. So, if you can see it, this is the elephant track that I'm talking about. And it's quite a big one. It's probably quite a big bull, or at least a sort of middle-sized bull. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw around the edges because he's registered, which means his back track has fallen on top of his front track. So his front track is here-ish, and his back track is here. Here you go. It's a sort of a rough indication of size. And if you sort of look at my hand, that is the size of his track. Fairly average size, large adult elephant track. Now, if we want to talk a little bit, oh, that's going to block the sun. We want to talk a little bit about the other tracks that we see. I'm going to go in size order for you, Joyce, in terms of feet. So next, in terms of foot size, is a rhino. A big white rhino bull will probably look something along that sort of size. So there you go, there's his track in the elephant track. About that size compared to that size. You cut that away. Your next big track is going to be a hippo track, which is going to be for a big male like this. 4 toes and round the back. So about roughly the same size as a white rhino bull. Nice big white rhino bull. I'm keeping my elephant track as a comparison size for you. Smooth that over. There you can see, it's just to remind you of the outline of the elephant track. That's here. Next, we're probably looking at a giraffe, which, although it is quite long, is also quite narrow compared to an elephant. So even that big male giraffe that we saw earlier will probably look something like this. Fall into the middle like this. And that's a very large giraffe track, right? The other ones that you sometimes see for the females are a little bit smaller than that. That's a very large giraffe track. That's in terms of size. And last but not least, you asked about a lion track. A lion track is roughly the size, because I've looked at them before, of my hand if I do that. So let's use that as a shape. This is now a track of a Birmingham boy, let's say. 1, 2, 3. Back pad. This is a big lion. This is a big male. 1, 2, 3, 4 toes. So about a little bit of that patch of the ground. The lioness is about 3/4 of that size. And Shadow's track, just to give you that last comparison in terms of size, is about the size of my palm. So a really tiny, delicate little track that looks much like that, even smaller than that. I'm not the world's best artist, Joyce, but just to give you a bit of a comparison of the size of the animals that we're going to see. And one last thing, whilst I make my way back towards the car, remove some of the sand from my legs. There's my track in comparison to our elephant bull. There you go. Bit of a size comparison. I apologize for not being the world's best artist. I also don't have the world's biggest feet either. But there you go. Our elephant size comparison along with all of the other animals that we will see out here. The other one was buffalo, which I forgot to do, and I was going to demonstrate, but I forgot. Oh, Wendy doesn't want to let me back in. There we go. Now buffalo is just a bit smaller than that big male giraffe track that I showed you. Alrighty, well let us continue on our way now that we've done a bit of tracking lessons. Now the wonderful thing about tracks is not just being able to identify which animal made them. It's that they tell you so much about what that animal was doing. And you learn about animal behavior from looking at their tracks, and you learn about tracking by looking at animal behavior. And I remember learning to track many years ago, looking at different tracks that we could see in the area. And the guy I was tracking with, he was incredible. It was like he could track birds through the air. And we were tracking a bull elephant, and he said to me, look here, this elephant turned its head left. And I thought that was absolutely astounding. I also thought he was kind of having me on as an apprentice guide, just getting to know the area and tracking. And he said to me, no, come look, watch next time you guys see an elephant. Watch when they turn their heads to the left. You might even see just that slightest shift in the way that their feet are positioned, and that just creates ever so slightly a bit of a blurring of the line of the track. It's really, really interesting to see. Tracks will tell you the whole story if you know how to read them. Speed, direction, everything along those lines. As I said, I am no artist, and I apologize for that. But apparently, according to Cucino John, my artwork puts James's to shame, which is...
Oh, I agree.
Oh yeah, Wildebeest agrees completely, which I'm quite chuffed by, considering my lack of drawing ability. I'm not sure what that says about James's artwork though. I did see a map drawing that he did in the ground at some point, so I'm on the same page. And on the subject of James, just because we are talking about him and vilifying his drawing abilities, James will be back next week, Wednesday, we think. We'll be back around the 6th, just to let you all know. And one thing I also forgot to mention this morning, I'm not sure if Brent mentioned it, is we also have Tara back in FC. She's back from leave, so we'll say a big welcome back to both Tara and to Kirsty, who are back on Juma once again. And speaking of being back to places, we're back to where I started this morning on the sunrise safari. Shadow, and I suspect it is Shadow, has pulled a sneaky maneuver on me somewhere. Somehow she's hidden herself away around here. Now I saw the tracks. Look, it's supposition on my part that it is Shadow. It's a guess that I'm making. I don't think it's Karula. I think that Karula's moved further north towards where Brent started his sunset safari. And I think this is Shadow moving through familiar areas to have a look around to see what she can find. Her tracks came into this block here. I've done the whole of the southern section because she very often was seen there with Sindile, and I thought maybe she might head to familiar ground. But it's also been so blazing hot today that she may just have gone into that drainage line and lay down and been hiding in the shade of a guari bush all afternoon. I haven't found her tracks coming out anywhere, but leopards can be sneaky things. I'm still going to do one more loop before I decide I've been defeated, and then return back here a little bit later when it's a bit cooler, and we're likely to hear either her moving around, therefore causing alarm calls, or else her calling, which is also a possibility. Her tracks came down from Balanites Road and moved east into this block here, and it's a huge system of drainage lines. It's very difficult to pinpoint exactly where she might have gone. This is a mystery to me. It's also not the easiest area to track in. It's unusually, for the Sabi Sands, it's unusually rocky in there. I'm also checking all of the big trees. Might be seeking refuge there. And if this fails, then I'm going to head across towards the Arathusa boundary and just check up with the guides there if they've seen any sign of her. Maybe she doubled back once she arrived here and didn't find anything. Wow, weather's coming in. It's good though. We really, really, really need that rain. I'm hoping it's going to come. Have changed. The bush has gone green and doubled in thickness in the last week or so. And I mentioned this morning we were sitting with a herd of nyala around the Galago Lodge, and I mentioned that I saw some pregnancy bulges around there. And Jennifer, who is watching all the way in Missouri, you wanted to know when the impalas start to have their babies. And on that note, if I see a herd, I'll stop for you and show you, because the ewes are starting to show. Every now and again you get a very funny angle that looks very much suspiciously like an elbow digging into poor mom. So they are around, and you were wondering when they're going to pop. It depends a little bit on the season that we can expect. If it's going to be dry, if the rains hold off, then they might be born a little bit late. And just to clarify, that's not a conscious decision on their part, it's a bodily response. It varies from year to year, depending on the rainfall and depending on the area you're in. But that being said, it's going to be around the end of November to the beginning of December is when we're going to see those babies coming through. Definitely an amazing time to be out and about in the bush. First the impalas, then the wildebeest. Those are the two with a sort of really strict breeding season. But the rest of the animals, although they don't have a strict time of year that they breed in, they're still going to be birth peaks during the rainy season, which of course makes total sense because it's resource dependent. And we're going to be seeing a lot of baby herbivores wandering around. Many different things coming through. This leopard has pulled a sneaky maneuver on me somewhere down the line. I don't know where she's vanished off to. Whilst I continue on my search for who I suspect to be the sneaky shadow who's taken a leaf out of her mother's book, let's head back across to Brent and see what he's been up to, as well as get some answers on his Spot the Parrot quiz. I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Back everyone, as you can see, I think these elephants have been causing quite a lot of havoc around here. So as you can see, 2 trees down on the road. So I'm going to be a little bit lazy, and I'm going to use the vehicle to just push it away a little bit off the road. That didn't work so well. It's just a little bit low for me to catch with the bull bar. So I'm going to just move it by hand, which I probably should have done in the first place. Normally, if it's a bit higher, you can just use the front bar of the vehicle to push these type of branches off. This is quite a strong one. It is a red bush willow, for those of you wondering, and it is quite a tough tree. I think it's just too stuck into the ground to pull off the road without a tractor. So we're going to leave it there. As you can see, the roots are still cemented. And this was definitely done sometime between the sunrise safari and the sunset safari. And that's incredible power these ellies have. So it's just a little bit too stuck there. So we'll just drive around for now. Report it to the gentleman with the tractor, and they can come pull it off the road. So, as those of you can remember, I asked, after I said that parrot had zygodactyl feet, I said, what is the defining thing of an animal or a bird that has zygodactyl feet? And Deborah, Raggedy Ann, and Mumsy all got it correct. And they have 2 feet facing forwards and 2 feet facing back. So all the parrot species and parakeets. Where's the brown-headed? There's our one we saw today. You can see, there we go. So 2 facing forward, 2 facing back. And the only other bird that has zygodactyl feet that we see in this area is the African green pigeon. So, and that's a lot of your fruit specialists like parrots will be able to do that. So keeping with birds' feet. So if a parrot's got zygodactyl feet, what type of feet does a dove have? Or most of the other birds, for that fact. So who knows what the other main foot type in birds is? And you can send your answers through to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag #SafariLive on Twitter. So these ellies have made tracking incredibly difficult in this area. They've pretty much walked everywhere. So even if Karula had crossed these roads, it's going to be a stroke of luck if we spot those tracks. And also, I know Jamie mentioned, you can see there's quite a large cloud bank moving in from the west. And maybe a little cold front. I don't think it's going to get too cold. And I don't think it's going to hold too much rain, maybe just a bit of wind and overcast weather. Watch me eat my words and be bundled up in jackets and scarves and gloves by tomorrow morning. That would be Murphy's Law for tempting with the weather. the area, I thought that those alarm calls came through probably around 10 o'clock, so it is quite a while ago. And we know how Madame Kruger does like to move during the day, even when it's very hot. So I'm going to check up towards Vuya to the access, up onto Aubrey's Road. Maybe she's continued a bit further to the west. More elephants. No, we're not going to stick with them just yet. We're going to keep on moving to see if we can find leopards, but there we go. I think this is probably the same group, in the road as well, that we saw at the waterhole. They've now moved up into this area to spread out and start feeding. I'll just sneak through them. Oh, and it looks like we might get a little run at from the little boy. Yes, yes, big and scary. Go back to your mom. Elephants, elephants everywhere. Oh, you're very scary. I'm sorry. I didn't stop and take. There we go. Go back to eating. You've sufficiently reprimanded us. As we move through these ellies after being severely reprimanded by that youngster. Yesterday I mentioned that one of the sort of natural controlling agents of elephants is anthrax. And for those of you who are not sure what anthrax is, it's a fungal spore that actually the animals will breathe in, and it will infect their lungs and kill them. And Jennifer was wondering, where on earth would elephants come into contact with anthrax? Anthrax occurs naturally all over this arid and semi-arid areas of southern and east Africa, and it's generally during very dry times that they come into contact with anthrax, and it's normally disturbed by kicking up dust or spraying dust, etc. like that, that they will pick up those anthrax spores, quite often on the edges of water holes and places like that. Not so much in the Sabi Sounds, but further north in the Kruger, where it's slightly drier. Okay, so if Madame Kruger was walking through here, she quite often used to like to go onto the Zoe's Road, so she would come straight across, not use this main access road, and use this elephant path that came on here. We're going to look carefully for tracks around here quickly. Andrew, you checking that side? See anything there? Negative, negative. Okay, and off we continue. Possibly onto the power lines. Nope. Also, the other problem is that because there have been so many elephants around since this morning, they will not particularly like a leopard in the area. So if they do find her, they will chase her off. So we're going to extend our search zone by a little bit. well done to Mumsy, Raggedy Ann, Joanne, and Elaine, who got that next bird feet question right. And they have ectodactyl feet, so 3 toes facing forward and 1 facing to the rear. So we've got no tracks here yet. So we're going to cut onto Aubrey's Road and check back down towards the Buffelshoek boundary. Hopefully we have some luck there. And I am keeping my ears peeled in case Mvula or Quarantine decide to start moving to the north, which will be straight towards us from where they are at the moment. Ideally, we want them to go northwest. Oh, hello. Another nice little warthog in the road. One of last year's babies by the looks of things, about to disappear off the road there. Let's see if we can have a better look. I think Mom's just ahead. Yeah, well, there's another one right here as well. We've got 3 pigs around us. One's about to hop across the road. Maybe. There we go. A little male, young male. You can see those 2 warts on the side of his face. And off they disappear into the thickets, the little water pigs. And as I spotted the warthogs, I also spotted another one of the most impressive antelope we get out here. Where did they disappear to now? There we go. There's quite a few kudu bulls in and around us here, so we're going to just sneak forward a bit. Oh, nice big boy here. Oh. It's amazing to think how they move through the bush with those massive horns. Often referred to as the grey ghosts. For every 1 kudu you see, there's probably 2 or 3 you don't. You can see that. See how they merge into the bush so well. And see, when they keep still, they're very hard to spot. So there's that one there. I can see 3 at the moment. There's another there. You can see those 2 there. You can just see the horns through that spike thorn, and the other one disappearing off into the compretums. So at least we know we've got a very good alarm system placed here. So if any predator were to wander this way, kudu have fantastic senses, great hearing, great eyesight, and an incredibly deep, loud bark alarm call. So we know this area is quite well covered. If a leopard does pop up around here, hopefully they'll spot her and start alarming. So we're going to continue on, knowing we've got the kudu watching our back in this area. cooler, a bit faster this evening. As dark skies come in. So while we continue to search this area for Madame Karula, we're going to cross back across to Jamie, who's got some interesting information for you guys.
Welcome back, and whilst you've been with Brent, I've done yet another big loop to see if maybe I missed Shadow's tracks crossing and she's somewhere in a different block. Still no sign of her. We've just reached the exact point where the Birmingham boys were the other day with Scott, where he spotted their tracks, jumped out of the car, went to go follow up and immediately saw them and returned quite hastily to the vehicle. I see it made the highlights reel. Very, very entertaining stuff. And it's funny how that happens sometimes. I've mentioned that I think that the female leopard that I'm tracking at the moment is probably Shadow. And I know that many of you by now will know the update, but we're going to share it with you once again. And Lindsay, who is watching all the way from Houston, you wanted to know what the update is with Sindile and the rabies situation. So to back up a little bit for anybody who might be joining us for the first time, Sindile was a young leopard. He was Shadow's cub, just over a year old, and starting to show a lot of signs of independence. Unfortunately, with Brent the one day, we saw him with one of his first big kills, or attempting to make a kill, and it happened to be a stray dog that had wandered in from the village. And that dog was later taken away to Pretoria, which is one of our big cities and where the sort of the central vet school is, and tested, and it tested positive for rabies. And there has been an increase in cases within the Hoedspruit area, which is very close to where we are. Now, in response to this, the Sabi Sands officials, as well as the state vet, have decided to take steps to not only protect Sindile's life, but also the animals around him, as well as the various people that live within the Sabi Sands. And what they've decided to do is they've darted him and they've taken him to a specialist facility where he can be given the series of vaccinations that he's going to need in order to prevent him from contracting rabies. And it's a preventative measure. The chances are, if he was not given those vaccines, the chances would have been quite high that he would contract rabies. So it is absolutely essential for his well-being. A very difficult decision to make, because it means that you have to take Sindile away from his mother a little bit too soon, although he was starting to show signs of independence. And obviously a very sad situation for Shadow. But absolutely, in my opinion, and many of the viewers will know that I've often said Sindile is my favorite leopard. He was the first leopard I tracked on foot here, and I definitely have a very soft spot for him. Now, he's been taken to that area for further observation, as well as his various vaccination schedules that he's have to have. Sorry, I'm trying to find a nice position to see these kuru whilst I talk. Please stay there, boy. But it's absolutely the best decision for Sindile's well-being. And as soon as we know anything further, then I promise you we will let you know. But that is where he's going to be for the foreseeable future. And he'll get the vaccinations that he needs, as well as the tests that he needs, and the care that he needs. Unfortunately, the best possible outcome for a rather unlucky situation. A nice male kudu standing there. You can see how thick the bush has got. 3 weeks ago, we would have seen this kudu perfectly clearly. Right now, we're having to peer in between the green leaves. And just to finish up my thoughts, although we are looking at the kudu, I'm going to finish my train of thought. Now I'm looking for Shadow at the moment. In terms of Shadow's exposure to rabies through Sindile, he wasn't showing any signs or symptoms, and he was removed well within the sort of incubation period of rabies, so we're not stressed about Shadow in that respect. She will be looking for him. She will be in a state of mourning for about 2 weeks. It is sad, and I do really, really wish that she could somehow understand that this is what we've done for the best well-being of her son. Unfortunately, it's not the case. It is just the best solution to a bad situation. And that's why I'm looking for her now. I want to see how she's looking. I know that she's been hanging out around Simbambili, but I do believe that the tracks I saw coming down this road did belong to her. This was an area that they were very frequently seen in. It's the area that I've seen them in the most, which is why I've been checking so thoroughly. And weirdly, whilst I was doing that tracking segment, and I am going to check Arathusa and then come back in this direction, just while I was sitting on the ground there, I had one of those feelings that you sometimes get in the bush. I don't know what it is. I hesitate to say it's a sixth sense. It's probably more like a sense of hearing that you aren't aware that you have. Your senses are interpreting it subconsciously, or a smell or something that was coming through to my brain. But something told me that something was watching me whilst I was doing that. It's not a scary feeling. It's just an awareness of eyes. And I've had it happen to me a couple of times in the bush. One such example was when young Sindile, being the playful little creature that he was, and during his learning curves, I was busy tracking him, and unbeknownst to me, he was tracking me too. And there was just something that made me turn around and look behind me to see what he was up to. So I'm going to return to that area. I don't know what it was. It could have been I don't know, it could have been a buffalo for all I know. But there was something. Just have a look at this sky. This is incredibly beautiful. Wow. And let us hope that that cloud system moving over the tip of the Drakensberg that you can see out there, let us keep our fingers crossed that it means some rain for the animals out here. We really, really need it. Oh, that's beautiful. You can hear the first rumblings of thunder. We see those tracks, or those leopard tracks from this morning, and they went straight into quite a similar area where Karula was a few days ago. And Jen in Idaho, you were wondering what happens if Shadow and Karula cross paths. And I'm going to continue on to Arathusa whilst I answer your question. There's a beautiful, beautiful view from here. Well, Jen, it's interesting, that situation. In terms of what would happen, female leopards, what tends to happen is their daughters stay around them or fairly close to them and establish territories, and it's not uncommon, especially for older female leopards, to slightly shift their territories in order to accommodate their daughters. That being said, they tend not to really like bumping into each other. For the most part, they will avoid each other. And if they do see each other, although they won't, most likely there won't be any kind of confrontation, they might snarl at each other a little bit and then move away from each other's space. Now, we've mentioned before, it's an interesting thing. The females tend to be more tolerant of their male cubs for a longer period of time. So they'll let their 2-year-old cubs, their 2-year-old male cubs, stick around, stay close to them, sometimes even share kills with them if they are in the area and they happen to bump into each other. And then after that period, then the males move far away from their mothers because of the nature of leopard dispersal. They run the risk, if they stick around, they run the risk of breeding with their sisters or their cousins. It creates a chance of inbreeding, so the males disperse far away. And yet, when they're raising female cubs, they become intolerant of their presence a lot sooner than they do of their male cubs, and they generally kick them out at about 1.5 to 2 years. They're off on their own, independent, much faster than the male cubs tend to do. But once they reach that sexually mature stage of life, they'll usually establish territories around their mothers, so they stick close. It's just an interesting little dynamic. I think in this case, they might snarl at each other. There are recorded cases of females being able to share the kill of their mothers, even once they are adults. It does happen, and I know that Brent's mentioned a couple of times that very interesting case where a daughter, so let's say, for example, like Shadow, had 2 cubs, and her mother also had a cub, and they all met together, shared a kill, and then the grandmother adopted the cubs of her daughter. Very interesting situation, very unusual situation. And nobody quite fully understands the motivation behind that. But interesting nonetheless. I'm checking along Triple M. This is where we so often saw Shadow moving around with Sindile. She always used to hide him somewhere in the block, either on this side or that side, close to this main Triple M road, and then she'd move backwards and forwards and come and collect him whenever she killed something. I'm hoping this is where she's thought to come and look for him. Shadow's behavior for the next few weeks. I said that she's probably going to mourn and look for him for a period of about 2 weeks, roughly, give or take. She is going to be walking up and down and trying to call from him. But after that, her body immediately kicks into the biological processes, and it's time to start recovering from that loss. And we've seen it a couple of times, including very recently with young Kutile, who we suspect had very, very young cubs, and that something has happened to them because she was mating quite enthusiastically with Tingana just a couple of weeks ago. And Ginny, you were wondering if Shadow's going to go back into estrus soon. Yes, she definitely is. It could well be a false estrus. It's just her body starting to prep her in response to the loss of a cub and the loss of a dependence. Interestingly, as we know with Shadow, she was mating with Tingana about a month ago, which was far sooner than we ever expected her to. It's not unheard of, but it's fairly abnormal for females with cubs of Sindile's age to then go off and start mating. It's very unusual, but it was something that she was doing. So it would be interesting to know how that kind of scenario plays out. Now, I said that I thought it was a false estrus at the time, and that I didn't think she was going to become pregnant. But who knows, she might already be. I might have been wrong about that. Alrighty, so we've been chatting a little bit about the updates from the various leopards of the areas and what's happened with Sindile and Shadow. And now let us continue discussing with the lions, which have also been in such a state of upheaval. And Christy, you were wondering if I have any updates on the Birmingham boys. So last we heard 2 days ago they'd crossed south into Chitwa, across Gowrie, Maine. And then there was a report this morning on the radio that they'd crossed north again into Torchwood, but nobody managed to locate them. Somebody reported the tracks, and then there was a bit of confusion. The guides weren't sure where they were or what was going on. quite difficult to follow on the radio, but it sounds as though somebody thought they saw tracks crossing, but there have been no confirmed sightings since the one that we had on Zoe's Road and since they crossed into Chitwa. Now the thing about the Birmingham boys at the moment is they are bouncing all over the place like ping pong balls, and it's part of their way of pushing the boundaries a little bit and really establishing where their territorial boundaries lie. So they're rushing backwards and forwards, trying to figure out exactly what is around them, where are the threats coming from, where are there big male lions to be avoided, where are there females to be mated with. They're still establishing themselves, which is why they are bouncing around from Kruger Park to Djuma to Chitwa, back to Torchwood. And last but not least, in terms of our updates, now I've said that the Birmingham boys are ping-ponging all over the place. Last we saw those two Nkahuma lionesses, they first of all were chased off a buffalo killed by the Birmingham boys. We followed them all the way to just where we are now on Arathusa, close to Red Dam. And then all of a sudden they were back again on on Gwari Pan Road, totally unexpectedly. And Sarah, who is 17 years old and one of our regular viewers from Ohio, Sarah wants to know if I have any updates on the Nkahuma Pride. Not since the day after I saw them that day on the Termite Mound on the Sunrise Safari, and then Scott had them on the Sunset Safari. The next morning there were tracks of them coming into Djuma and being chased out by the Birmingham boys. We could only see it from the tracks, just reading the situation from there. But beyond that, we didn't know anything about it, or what had happened, or what went down during the night. Then the guides have reported seeing females on the Buffelshoek Manuleti boundary. Now, although the core home range of the Nkahumas has seemed to be Djuma, Torchwood and Buffelshoek, around that area, occasionally into this section of Arathusa, they have been known to move up into Manuleti on a fairly regular basis. Now, if I were them, and we still don't know if they have reunited, all we saw were those two lionesses, if I were them, I would hightail it to Manuleti and stick around there for now. And I'm not sure, but I think that's what they might have done. None of the guides have seen them recently, apart from the report of one or two of them on the Manuleti boundary. So those are my suspicions. We just have to wait and see how the situation plays out. Obviously, we're all really holding thumbs that those two lionesses, those two young lionesses, one of whom was mating with the Birmingham boys, we just have to hold thumbs that they do reunite once again and find each other again. I'm just going to hop onto the Game Drive channel, see if the guys can hear me. It usually depends on their proximity to my vehicle as to whether or not we can communicate with each other. Afternoon stations, are there any updates from Arathusa? Oh well, it's definitely worth a try. We'll wait until we can try again in a moment. Let's go check the drainage lines where these leopards like to hide. Oh, sky is getting darker. The rain is coming, but it's still not here yet, and it is quite warm. It's actually almost got that oppressive feeling as the heat rolls up in front of a cold front, which is what always happens. It kind of pushes the last of the heat in front of it. And it's also starting to go still. There's a light breeze. This front is advancing really slowly. And it's only when the cold winds hit and they really start to swirl around you that you know that the elephant's front is on its way. My goodness me, there are just elephants everywhere at the moment. Trying to find you guys a nice view. They're going to come to us. Shapes in the bushes. I'll duck, there you go. Let's see, there's one there. Goodness. It's unbelievable. I feel like half the roads I drive down I see elephants. I don't know why. Anyway, just to finish up with my conversation about the weather, Pamela, you were wondering how cold it gets in the Sabi Sands. Now at the moment the answer is not very, although I could eat my words tomorrow morning if this cold front has hit overnight. Now in midwinter and mid-June it can drop to around 2 or 3 degrees on a really, really cold day, but the coldness really comes from the wind chill factor. So when you're driving in these open vehicles, as we are, it tends to be a lot colder. Just as you get that motion, it washes away or blows away any kind of extra heat you might have. I'm going to try and reposition so we can see these ellies. At this time of year, it doesn't get all that cold. We've had a couple of surprise cold snaps where it went down to about 15 degrees centigrade in the morning, which is... Sorry, no, the conversion's not going to happen. I'm not that good at converting Fahrenheit in my head. But it is occasionally fairly chilly. But for the most part, we've had a couple of days that have been around 34 degrees centigrade. And that is plenty of heat that builds up in the earth and keeps us warm. I think I'm going to leave these elephants. It's going to be incredibly difficult to get to them. They're in very, very thick bush, and they are not showing any signs of popping out of it. They're quite happily ensconced and feeding in there, and I think if I try and get the vehicle in, they're going to just move away from me further into the bush. And we have had so many amazing elephant sightings over the last few days. Not that I don't love elephants, you all know I love an elephant sighting. But this one is, in my opinion, not going to work out. What I really wanted to do is pop my nose into Arathusa, do a loop around, see if there were any updates from the guides, whilst keeping an eye out for any kind of leopard tracks that might be around and about. But the guides, I think, are all busy with that wonderful leopard Salayeshe, who has a cub far on the other side of Elephant Plains. And I think that's where they might be, which is why I can't hear them. And whilst I continue on my search of the drainage lines in Arathusa, and it seems as though all of the animals are anticipating this cold front, they've all gone to ground. But whilst I continue to look for them, let's head across to Brent, see what he is seeing, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back. Sorry, Andrew is dying like a wounded buffalo behind me. I think he might have swallowed an insect, so I apologize. And speaking of wounded buffalo, we've just arrived at the Buffalo's Hook waterhole, and we have saddle-billed stork, wounded buffaloes, or maybe not so wounded, and a hippopotamus who's been in a big fight. It looks like a very young bull hippopotamus. Have a look at him quickly now. He's just off to the right. Andrew is still recovering from his insect experience. And you can see all those scars from being chased and bitten by another hippo. And strange enough, this hippo must have come in here sometime during the day, because I came here, Andrew and I were here actually early this morning, and there was no hippo.
Mm-mm.
And there's a hamakop. Let's come back to that hippo quickly there, please, Andrew. You can see all those scars very distinctly. Some of them look quite fresh. And the worst one actually looks to be on his head. And on the other side of the head. We can't really see it, but I just see this. Looks like quite a deep gash there. And being a young bull hippo, or actually any hippo. Oh, quickly, the saddle bull's just caught a tilapia. All happening here at Buffalo's Hook. Oh, did he drop it? No, he got it. Is it a tilapia? Is it a tilapia or is it a catfish? Looks to be a tilapia. Let me grab my binoculars.
Yep, tilapia.
That is a tilapia. And he'll now proceed to beat it for quite some time before swallowing it. They've got very spiny pectoral fins and dorsal fins. Oh. So what they'll do is they'll make sure it's very dead, but also, so that's, if that fish is even slightly alive, it'll be able to extend those fins when the saddle bull tries to swallow. So it will definitely, it likes to really give it a good chewing before trying to eat it. Oh, down it went. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, and there we go, down the gullet. And a little drink to follow. There we go, and then we've got this wonderful group of old buffalo bulls full of character. And two of them right in the water there. Just keep an eye on the hippo. I think he might open his mouth again. So, as I said, looks like he's trying to get that wound that we can't really see properly on the other side into the water or maybe into the mud. And I don't think it's very deep there at the moment, and I think he's probably collapsed his elbows in to be able to lie there. You can see he's trying to get the side. Oh, he's going to roll. Oh. Oh, there we go. A full 360. And I suspect, as you can see, the wounds on his back now completely covered in mud. And I think you probably find a lot of the flies and that have really been irritating those wounds. And so he's rolled, putting his back in the mud. You can see all the mud on his back there now, to try sort of create a layer over those wounds to stop the flies and other biting insects irritating them. Oh, there's a very tight buffalo here. And he's got his head in a very comfortable position by the looks of things. And you can see he's got old boy. Oh, it looks like he's blind in the right eye. Just saw him open that eye. Very tattered ears and a swarm of flies. Seems like everyone here at Buffalo's Hook has been in the wars at some point in their life, and the next buffalo in the water to the left of him is missing on the one side of his horn. Probably lost that in a fight. Getting into that soothing water, probably to escape a lot of the flies, but what happens is when you get into the water, unfortunately, there are other things that might irritate him, and you see those little ripples coming off him. I'm quite sure there's some terrapins busy taking advantage of basically a big, yes, there we go. And you can see why he jumps every now and then. So they'll be feeding off the ticks that are on him, and quite often, not on purpose sometimes, but they will grab a large piece of flesh with a tick. Oh, Sindile coming right up to us, and I know you guys have been asked this question many times, so I'm not going to do that to you guys again. But there we go, opening his wings. He's actually probably just cooling down more than anything else, trying to get some cool air under the wings. And as he moves, you can see those wattles on the side of his face shake, and that's what tells us it's a male. Where are you off to, mister? There we go, you can spot the wattles hanging there and the dark brown eye. Now the female is going to have a yellow eye. Oh, ruffle. So opening wings like that and just running around, not really trying to take off. What he was trying to do is just cool down a little bit. It has been a really warm day. Probably high today was high 80s, low 90s in Fahrenheit, into about 33 degrees Celsius. There, Andrew's, oh, he's on his move, Andrew. Oh, Andrew. No. Andrew is trying to move the aerial for you, and there we go. Nice work, Andrew. And he's had his tilapia, and off goes. Murphy's Law, as Andrew starts playing with the aerial, one of our radio aerials, the Sindile decides to take a running takeoff from the top of that little embankment. And now that Sindile has, the one Sindile has departed. I'll keep an eye on the other. And we back to this hippo here who's did a complete 360 roll in the mud there to cover those wounds on his back from some of the biting insects around. Most likely from the biting flies. And Melanie is wondering why he's by himself, and is it unusual to see a hippo by itself? Well, Melanie, at this time of year, there is pressure for water, and this dam is quite shallow at the moment. It's very, very low, and the bigger dams that have got lots of lady hippos will have big dominant bull hippos in there, and they will not tolerate young bulls like this guy there, so they will chase them off. And these young bulls, you can find them in the tiniest little patch of water to try and keep moist between the nocturnal feeding, and obviously this is to try avoid those big bulls. And you can see he's already had quite a nasty tussle. When we first arrived, we could see all those new wounds on his back were quite prominent, and I'm quite sure that's from a tussle with a big bull. So staying in a not ideal water hole like this one, gives him a chance to avoid being beaten up by those bigger boys. And once he gets a bit older, he does look quite young, and I'm sure he'll have a few more battles yet. He will move into one of those areas, those bigger waterholes that have lots of ladies, and hopefully do some breeding. And then the other time you find hippos by themselves is then when the males become much older, and they are pushed into these same situations, but because they are too old to compete for the breeding rights now. Occasionally you might find females and whatnot in a waterhole like this that's very low, if they've possibly been chased by lions or had to walk really far to get food and ended up being stuck far from where they would prefer to stay, so they would then spend a day in one of these type of waterholes. So, well, we're going to spend a few more minutes here just listening. I did hear some Franklin alarm calls. I want to listen for a little bit longer. But while we do that, we're going to send you back across to Jamie, who's got one of our smaller animal friends.
Welcome back to my second scrub hare during the day sighting that I've seen whilst I've been working at WildEarth in the last week or last 10 days or so. Since VM spotted the last one, he spotted this as well. So we have the wildebeest's fantastic eyes to thank for this. Not often you get to see a scrub hare out during the day like this. And this one is fairly relaxed. I'm not going to push that by getting any closer, so when he does move out of the way, we'll leave him, or he'll just dash away. But every single one of our hare and rabbit species within South Africa are nocturnal, which is why it's quite unusual to see one out and about like this. Not sure why that is. It might be as a result of the weather. It's still very, very hot. But I suppose, as with anything, these guys don't read the textbooks, so sometimes they just get hungry or get tired of sitting around in their hiding places waiting for night to fall, and they come hopping out, just like this one has done. You can see those enormous ears and very wide-eyed, adapted for perfect nocturnal wanderings, quite clearly reliant on their night vision as well as their hearing. You can see how he disappears with that colouring into that grass. Very, very cool. How exciting is that? Scrub hare during the day. 2 in 10 days. Very impressed. Amazing to see things like that. It's one of my favourite things of being out and about in the bush every day, is that you get to see all kinds of wonderful and unexpected things. And speaking of wonderful and unexpected things, I'm going to start heading in an easterly direction because I'm fairly certain I see rain on the horizon. I think we're going to make it though. We're going to make it to the end of the sunset safari, but it is coming. You can definitely see rain falling from the clouds. So we're going to leave our scrub hare. Bye-bye. Ooh, he's hopped off anyway. Disappeared into the bushes. Leave him be. So nice to see him so relaxed. Quite content to let us view him. Very, very interesting little creatures. I know I've discussed it before, but with an interesting habit known as coprophagy. So in order to digest the indigestible, or at least make the most of the bits of the plant material, such as cellulose, they eat it once and then eat the dung that they then defecate. They eat it again and they reprocess it in order to make sure that they manage to digest all of what they can from that food. Very interesting tactic. Not one that's adopted by that many animals. Interesting, because the adults, in terms of scrub hares, the adults will do it all the way through their lives. The only other real example of coprophagy in mammals around here is when young males, and I've seen hippo do it and I've seen zebra do it. So young mammals, so babies, foals and baby hippo calves, they will also practice coprophagy. They will eat their mother's dung in order to get the antibodies as well as a couple of the bacteria bits that they need to help them digest plant material. Something that might make us go ew, but really is an important part of the way that they function and digest their food. Traveling along Magic Willy Road now, checking the drainage lines, and then onto, as a last-ditch effort to find out where Shadow might be, onto Parallel Road South, which is when I first started working here, where she seemed to be spending the most amount of time. We just have to wait and see if she does emerge out onto it. I've driven Wendy in I'd say about 3 weeks. For some reason I always seem to be on jigger, and I've definitely overcompensated in this particular circumstance by creating, I always have to have a booster seat. Most of the regular viewers will know that. I need a little extra height boost in order to see over the top of the vehicle. And it's not just me, because Mr. Henry does as well. But today I've definitely overcompensated because my feet don't quite touch the ground today, and I've got the distinct impression of sitting like when you're a child and you pile up a pile of cushions and sit on them and topple over. That's sort of the situation that I'm at right now. I think I just put one extra blanket too many. Checking this nice sandy patch of road carefully for any leopard tracks that might indicate Shadow came back this way. We've just left that really interesting scrub hare sighting, and Julia, who's in Houston, you wanted to know if I thought maybe the green shoots of the grass, and as you can see if you're a regular viewer, it's like the bush has just changed overnight. It's completely different to what it has been. And Julia, you were wondering if that's the reason the scrub hares are being tempted out during the day. Yes, it's more than possible, I suppose, although why that would get them to change their habits, I'm not too sure. You just have to, it's guesswork. I don't really have a proper theory as to why that might be. It might just be that Liam is better at spotting them than any of the rest of us, because so far he's spotted both of them whilst I've been out with him. I'm actually going to try and get you a view of the sky. It is so beautiful. Let's see if I can find a nice spot to show it to you. And you can see the patches of rain that are slowly making their way towards us. Definitely exciting news for all of the animals. I'm really hoping it brings some rain to us fairly soon. Come on, Arethusa, present me with a nice open clearing so I can demonstrate what I mean. Well, that's definitely rain. This is good news. That's what I'm talking about. Those thick sheets of water coming down wherever that is, to the south of us. And that's where this cold front is blown in from the southwest. And it's coming. Slowly but surely it's coming. It's definitely good news. It's not going to hit during our sunset safari, but it is coming. I hope it arrives here as well. Okay, let's go check parallel road south. I just wanted to show you that sky that's coming towards us. Traffic. Hello, hello. As I said, I'm checking all of the areas where there's a possibility that shadow might be hanging out. She moved a lot within this block and within this area, and around the Triple M Bowery main jump. Some evidence of her moving around. I'm really keen to see her, just to comfort myself at least that she's doing okay. She's going to be absolutely fine. It's more just to see her and reassure ourselves. Oh, and the road is graded for us. And whilst we continue on our search for the mysterious shadow, who, as I said, has taken a leaf out of Karula's book, let us head across to Brent and see how his afternoon drive is going. I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back as we head further into this dark, ominous cloud bank. Hopefully there's some predators waiting. We haven't found any sign of any yet, but that doesn't mean they're not there. So we're going to continue on. We're going to go check down towards our southern boundary. Hopefully something might be moving in this cool weather. If not, I'm still so convinced that Karula is in that area around Gallagher. I'm going to make my way back there. So Andrew and I were actually discussing whether this cold front is going to produce much rain. I don't think so. I think if it does, it'll be very little. Andrew seems to think it might produce a little bit more rain, but we will find out in the morning. It's quite nice. The temperatures drop quite a lot. It's almost an ideal temperature at the moment. Now we just want to find the pitter-patter of kitty cat feet on the roads. Preferably with the kitty cat still in the feet, or in the tracks, rather than having to start tracking now as it gets dark. Probably going to have to use our spotlight a little bit earlier tonight than we would have normally. Well, we're having a little quiet moment down this lovely straight road. We've got a question from Sibo in Hammanskraal, which is just outside the capital city of Pretoria in South Africa. Good evening, Sibo. Sibo is wondering, is it possible to crossbreed black and blue wildebeest? And if so, what are the characteristics of the offspring? And is it good for the wildebeest? Well, Sibo, it is not possible to cross those two. They are under the same family, as you could say, or the same sort of genus, like as you could say, like an inyala and a kudu. So it's not possible to crossbreed them at all. And depending on the areas, crossbreeding in general with animals is generally not a very good idea. So possibly one of the biggest crossbreeding threats we face in this area, and one of the reasons that all unsupervised or unknown domestic animals, so apart from obviously the very big threat of disease, which we all know a lot about now, rabies and things like that, and canine distemper, and cats also do carry quite a few diseases that can be detrimental to the wildlife. But the biggest problem with cats is actually crossbreeding with African wildcats. Now, domestic cats originally come from the African wildcat, and it was originally habituated to people, or domesticated, not habituated, in ancient Egypt. But so there are very, very few areas where you get purebred African wildcats. So generally crossbreeding of different animals is not a good idea. You will find it is actually not the easiest thing to do, and to create the monstrosities that are called ligers and things like that, you actually almost have to force a lion and a tiger to mate, and it's a very violent, unpleasant process for the animals. So it is not generally a good idea to crossbreed different species. With domestic animals, it's a little bit different, and it's been done a lot, obviously, with cattle and goats and sheep. But those animals obviously are very different and often live in very confined spaces together, or not confined, but in very small areas together. So a very different thing with domestic animals. And the reason we do crossbreed certain domestic animals is to take the best attributes of one. So I know there's a breed of cow that some of you might have heard of called a Brahmin, originally from India. And it's a very tough and hardy animal. So originally, when brought out to Africa, they were crossbred with other animals to give other cows to give them that sort of toughness that it took to survive in the early sort of colonial days of Africa when farming was quite new. But generally, not a good idea at all. The domestication of cats is actually a really interesting thing. Obviously, it's a lot of guesswork. It happened a long time ago. And fortunately, the ancient Egyptians, they do have those wonderful hieroglyphs, and they actually documented a lot of what went on. So, as far as we can work out, watch out, Andrew. As far as we can work out, basically, the African wildcats would have come in around the granaries, where a lot of the maize was stored and other foodstuffs were stored, which obviously attracted a lot of rodents. And the Egyptians then saw that these cats were far more of a help than a hindrance. And the worship of cats in ancient Egypt actually went to a ridiculous level. And quite often the cats were embalmed and entombed with their owners when their owners died. And when Egypt was still a protectorate of the British Empire, and a lot of those sarcophaguses and tombs and stuff were being explored and opened, they actually found a sort of cat cemetery, and there was thousands upon thousands of embalmed cats in jars. So much so that a couple of tons was exported to the UK as a use of fertilizer. So really, really fascinating. So they took all those embalmed cats and crushed them up and used them as fertilizer. But a very, very interesting and strange fixation that ancient Egyptians had with the domestic cat. And even if you look at a lot of the hieroglyphs, a lot of the painting of the eyes and stuff was all to resemble a cat. While we're chatting on cats, we'll move from the small ones to the slightly larger ones and the mortality rate. So Rumey is wondering, why is the mortality rate so high in leopards? Is it from disease or other external factors? Well, Rumey, the Sabi Sands, as we know, is the most interesting place and with the most well-documented information on leopards. And we can actually go to a leopard we know quite well, called Shadow, and Panthera and whatnot have been keeping information from the guides and whatnot over all the years. And if I remember correctly, she's had 5 litters. This could be her 6th. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 75% of those litters have been killed by other male leopards. 50% by male leopards and 50% by hyenas, and the others are unknown. Which quite often happens. You'll find a female leopard who's got sucker marks in the cub, and she might lose the cub. But from the Panthera information, in this area, in the Sabi Sands, 75% of leopard cub mortalities, known leopard cub mortalities, those are the ones that they can say for 100% were done by that, are done by male leopards. And the rest that make up known are lions and hyenas. And there are a couple of odd ones in there as well, including python. And I know actually I used to see that female leopard who lost 2 cubs to a python while she was away hunting. Found the den, the cubs were very, very young, and the python ate them. It is possible some of the smaller predators, like jackal and whatnot, if they find an unattended leopard cub, they will kill it. But generally it is the other large predators are responsible for the most of the cub mortality in this area. And you'll find with lions, it'll be very similar, that male lions are probably the highest killer of other lion cubs as well. So very interesting stuff. It's all to do with competition, fighting for your little spot in the sun and trying to get the maximum. So we're going to head off this boundary road now and start slowly making our way as it gets darker towards that area where we heard those alarm calls at about 10:30 this morning, and hopefully get some leopard luck. As we meander towards that last position of Madame Krula, or where I think she is, we're going to cross back across to Jamie, who's going to take you on an incredible audio journey through the bush.
Well, welcome back, and I've just chosen a nice clear open spot to take you on both a visual and an auditory or an audio tour of the area. Just look at the rain falling down on the mountains. misting up around it. It's going to be a beautiful evening. Now I'm going to be quiet for the moment, and let's just listen to the sounds of the bush. Hear if we can hear any alarm calls or the thunder that's rumbling. And apart from the slight buzz of a spider hunting wasp and the cracking of trees of the ever-present elephants that are behind us, it's absolutely silent. It's the most silence I've heard over the last few days, ever since the rains came. There's always been a constant source of noise. Here's some babblers calling, but it really is completely dead still. And it's like the calm before the storm. It's coming towards us slowly. There's a red-crested korhaan calling. It's like the whole world is, or at least the whole world out here in this vast open space, is just holding its breath and waiting for the incoming storm to break. It's incredible to hear. Oxpeckers, Franklin's calling. It's coming, the storm is coming. I'm really hoping that rain makes it all the way here. It very often gets trapped on the mountains and doesn't quite reach us. Okay, I've also stopped to listen to hear if I could hear Shadow calling. It's that right time of the evening, it's just starting to get dark. And we're listening for any sounds that she might be making, including alarm calls of any animals that might be seeing her, as we bravely continue on our loop back again to where I last had her tracks, because I'm sure she's here somewhere. She's watching me, I promise you. Hello Impala, you're also watching me. Watching me with sort of a blatant disinterest, before calmly going back to their evening meal. It's a couple of young rams. And I wonder what they must feel coming into the darkness of the night, especially a night like this one, when they know that they're going to have no moonlight, no ambient light, and at a time when predators abound. It's going to be windy, it's going to be dark. I wonder if they feel any kind of apprehension as the sun starts to set, or if it's an awareness that hasn't really struck them. Be interesting to know what goes on in the mind of an impala. You have a very, very strong whiff of elephants. Oh, I can hear them too. Alright boys, well you better keep your ears and your eyes open, because there's a leopard somewhere here. I'm not sure, I'd love to tell you, but I don't know where she is. Somewhere in that general direction. Alrighty, let us press onwards and see if we can find where Shadow has gone. This is close to where I did that tracking demonstration earlier, and I've done a loop around and come back now. It's a bit cooler and a bit darker. It almost smells like a bull in must, that elephant smell. But it's always got that sort of dried grass or that grassy smell, the stable smell of an elephant, but with an overtone of musky scent. I don't know how else to describe it, but you're always very aware of it and what it means. I think there's an elephant bull in must somewhere in here, somewhere in this region. You might even have been looking at his tracks earlier. Oh, I can see him. A dark shape in the distance. Sure. Very thick in there. We're going to struggle to see him. We'll try shifting forward a little bit, that might help. A little bit of a gap. Nope. You'll just have to trust me in this regard. I promise you there is an elephant in there. I'm not going to go pushing in there with my lights on. Not at night, not especially if he's not in must, or if he is in must. Right, so as I said, I've returned back to the place where I did the tracking example, partly because I've just got one of those funny feelings that something was watching me. Could even have been that elephant actually, since I was busy looking at elephant tracks at the time. They were very fresh looking. But it's happened to me a couple of times in my life. I mentioned that particular example with Sindile, whilst he was tracking me as I was tracking him. Also happened to be very vividly on a sleep out, which we used to always take our volunteers out. We'd have a watch system, so we'd go sleep out in the open, just like we are here, but with somebody keeping a watch at all hours of the night with a torch, every now and again just getting up and shining. And we try to choose places where we could create safety points with the vehicles. And then we slept out under the stars. Oh, listen to the cicadas. Definitely coming through. And we'd lie there. It was one of my favorite things to do, was lie out in the open and just listen to the sounds of the evening. And I've never ever felt uneasy about doing it, and I've done many of them in my time. And this particular night I'd gone ahead and I'd set up in the drainage line, put all the beds down, got a fire going, all of those sorts of things. And from about half an hour before the volunteers arrived, I had this really, the hairs on the back of my neck were standing on end. I did a big loop, couldn't find anything. And it was like that all the way up until about 10 o'clock at night. I was wide awake, just keeping an eye out the whole time. And then all of a sudden at 10:30 it just disappeared. That feeling completely vanished, and I went to sleep quite happily in the knowledge that everything was fine. I don't know what I was doing, if I was hearing something or smelling something, but the next morning we went and had a look around, and there were just black rhino tracks all the way around the edge of our camp. We'd been exploring the area that we were in and just having a gentle sniff. And in the end, nothing too dangerous, but just an interesting example of how those sensors can play an interesting role. Time to get some lights on, I think. Mentioned before that these kinds of cloudy nights are the nights of the predators, where they have the most success in terms of hunting success. Now Janine, visibly with those impalas, I was chatting a little bit about wondering whether or not they feel any kind of anxiety. And I think that they probably do. I mean, they probably do in the sense that they can't see as well as the predators. So their vision is not particularly good, and in terms of their night vision, it's still better than ours by a long way. They've still got that reflective layer at the back of their eyes. So when I'm shining with a spotlight like this, if I see the light bouncing back green, so that's sort of an eye shine, I know that it's one of the herbivores. But although they do see well at night, they definitely don't see as well as the nocturnal predators. So they'll have a bit of limited vision, more than we would have, but not as much as a leopard or a lion that's specially adapted to take advantage of evenings like this. And then of course there's the other nocturnal animals which you're always keeping an eye out for at this time of the evening. Something like a porcupine or a civet, even an aardvark, which I still have yet to be shown any proof that they exist, apart from seeing their tracks and falling into their burrows, but apparently they do. And they will have, of course, the best night vision of any of the creatures out here. I continue on my search for this mysterious leopard who appears to have pulled the wool over my eyes. Let's go and have a look at Brent's beautiful perspective on the sunrise. Sorry, not the sunrise, the sunset. I'm getting my times of day mixed up. Let's head across to him and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. Apparently Jamie's getting the sunrises and sunsets a little confused, but it's definitely a sunset safari. We'll have a nice look at the sky now once I get onto the middle of the Djuma Dam wall. Oh, I don't know if you're going to be able to get it angles. Hopefully it doesn't run away. Oh, he disappeared. Oh, I can just see him through there. I don't know if we're going to be able to get the camera onto it. Do you see that? Can you get into the center of that hole there, Andrew? Let me just get up onto this ridge. There. You see what I'm looking at? Just, no. Okay, wait. Let me have a shine from there. Where am I looking? Sorry guys, I'm just trying to figure out in the monitor where I'm looking with my eyes. Okay. Okay, let's start a bit wider. So you see, okay, there we go. So if we come down here, he's just under that overhang there. Let me go forward a tiny skosh, hopefully he doesn't move. So you need to be about where I am now. Okay, they should still, whoopsie, there we go. Oh, just, there we go. There is a little morose tropical house gecko. So you can just see off to the right of that rock there's a slightly different colored little thing. I'm just gonna move for a second so I can put the spotlight in a better spot for you guys. Oh, there we go. He just disappeared down all. Oh, there we go. Well, not something we see on all the drives, and unfortunately not the best visual, but a little morose tropical house gecko. I do have a picture of him, so let's get up and have a quick look at that beautiful little last bit of the twilight, and I will jump into my book and see if I can get you a better picture of the morose tropical house gecko. It's a name that just sort of rolls off the tongue. Do a quick scan, make sure there's no leopards hiding around here. There we go, we can get the nice little bit, and you can hear the water thickneys calling. Now, where is my rip? So isn't that sky stunning as this cloud bank creeps from the west to the east? You can hear hardy-dar ibises calling, and they're actually about to fly over. You might just pick up the black spots coming through the cloud there. There they go. Hardy-dar ibis, or in East Africa, as they call them, Hadada ibises. Okay. Nearly there, guys. I'm just trying to find, there are a lot of geckos around in this book. I'm just trying to find the right one for you. think it's going to be under house geckos, not just geckos. Can't seem to find it just yet. Sorry about this. Ah, there we go. So it wasn't under house gecko, it was under tropical house gecko. Oh, and I definitely, I've lost the page. Well, at least I know exactly where to look this time. There we go. It's literally, I think it's mentioned in about 12 different places in this book. So I'm going through the different, this is terrible, but I think I'm finally in the right spot. There we go. Let's see, got enough light there, Andrew?
Yes.
So there we go. You saw how I knew it was a female morose. It's that very light color. It's the lightest colored gecko we see around here. And one of our more common gecko species. We find them around our camp a lot, and where there's electric light that attracts insects, you'll often find the geckos there taking advantage of the free and easy meal. So, not the easiest thing. You can see they're quite small. That's your sort of average sized light bulb, and that's why that one was probably quite difficult to see on the camera. And no, that's a flathead tropical house gecko, Andrew. Don't get confused now. Yeah, and Andrew getting a bit excited there, going, I know it took me a long time to find it in the book, Andrew, but it's that one's not the morose. Well, there we go. There's the morose tropical house gecko, and we're back in that area around Galago and Vuyatela camp, where I'm hoping Madam Karula, or actually I will take pretty much any leopard at this stage, makes an appearance. We were chatting a little bit about leopard mortalities a little bit earlier on this sunset safari, and that was a question from Renee, and Renee's actually got a really lovely follow-up question from that, and that is, are there any areas in Africa where leopards have a higher success rate at raising cubs? There are, Renee, but one of the interesting things is as soon as you have a high density of leopards, you're going to have a very high mortality rate. And obviously that is because there will be quite a lot of influx of males in and out, and there's a lot of leopards in the area. Oh, we're not going to pop the light on them, but just to show you, you might get a bit of a silhouette. You can see the long neck of Africa. The camel leopard, if you break up its Latin name. So since we're speaking about leopards and can't seem to find any, we shall show you a camel leopard in the dark. Camilo pardus. And that's a male, we can see, there's no hair on the horns, but we shall leave Monsieur Giraffe to his nocturnal wanderings, and we shall try find a non-camel leopard. Just a straight leopard, I think, will do. But so, Rene, it's one of those interesting things where you have large populations of leopards, you generally do have large mortality rates, and that's obviously because there's a lot of leopards in the area. But leopard mortality rates vary quite a bit throughout. But in the case of leopards, most of the time it'll always almost be 50% or higher. So it is always a high mortality rate where there are leopards occurring. In areas where they are close to human civilization, like big cities and that, obviously there's a whole different set of mortality rates that affect them. Actually quite common is actually being run over by motor vehicles crossing large freeways and main roads. But always generally a very high mortality rate, 15% and upwards. And the area that has got the most leopard is in Africa, is the South Luangwa Valley in Zambia, and that has got the highest density of a leopard anywhere in the world, or not in the world, in Africa. There are incredible leopard densities in civilized areas in India. So incredibly small territories, and they all live very close together in India, and again a very high mortality rate in those areas. And we have a scrub here in the road, so I'm going to turn off my lights as not to blind the poor little guy. Still there, and there we go. Off he goes to the left. So since we are passing a scrub here, and I know Jamie's shown you one in the light, I've got a question for you about scrub hares. And when I refer to a scrub hare as a precocial animal, what do I mean? What is a precocial animal? And what is an altricial animal? And a scrub hare is a precocial animal, and a rabbit is an altricial animal. A bit more tech savvy, and like the Twitter sphere, you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Come on, Karuna. Where are you hiding? I'm hoping that the elephants have moved off and she might possibly make her way to that Gallagher waterhole for a nice cool quenching drink. Another scrub here. So obviously I've mentioned quite a few times that we are about, I think, and according to the information I've got, about to go into a very dry, wet season. I'm sure it will still rain and whatnot, but it is going to be quite a dry, wet season. So I'm sure this is what's preempting Sharon's question. And Sharon is from sunny Florida, and she's wondering, are there any natural springs within our area? In the area we traverse, Sharon, no. I only know of two, I apologize, natural springs within the Sabi Sands. There might be a few more that I don't know about, and those are both to the south of the Sand River in a gabbro soil. So there's a rocky and clayey soil where there is a natural spring there, and that has never dried up in the time that I worked in the Sabi Sands. So it is possible that won't dry up this season. But that is the only two, and they're very close to each other. What have we there? Is that just get a safety from a distance? I think it might be a running thing. Let's have a look on the side. Is that another scrub here, or is it something a little more interesting? a nightjar. There we go. Just always pays. You never know, we might spot a porcupine or one of the other nocturnal critters coming out to feed. So well done to Joan and Connie, and you've got the precocial altricial rabbits and hares figured out. A precocious, or comes from the word precocious, a precocial animal. So a hare is born out in the bush, and it is a fully formed miniature version of the adult, and it is able to run within minutes of birth. So a lot of other precocial animals that we see regularly, impala, wildebeest, kudu, all precocial. Altricial, the babies are born blind, naked and helpless in a den somewhere, and a rabbit it does that, and that's where the altricial comes from. And so the other animals we see around here that are altricial could be hyenas, lions, leopards, and of course one of the most altricial animals in the whole world is the human being. So it looks like Madam Karula has evaded us yet again. I'm just going to make my way up towards this road junction. There's another precocial hare. Off the road, mister or missus. There we go. And I'm just going to make my way up to the next road junction where I can have a look both ways. Hopefully we might have that tiny dash of luck. And of course, if we do find her, I shall say it is skill, and there was no luck involved at all. So we have reached our destination on the roads here. We look a long way, and unfortunately no Karula or any other leopard. But thanks very much for joining Andrew and I on the Jigger, this sunset safari. It's been really wonderful having you here, and been great the amount of questions we've got. Really enjoyed interacting with you guys this evening, and be sure to join us for the sunrise safari. So from Andrew and myself, we bid you adieu and bon nuit.
Oh, welcome back. And I've just been trying to locate the scops owl on quarantine. And there's 3 of them, and they're all playing games with me. Every time I get close to finding them, they disappear off. But I've just stopped here. You can hear them calling in the distance. I'll be quiet for a moment so we can. There's a little bit of lightning coming through as well. There was a spectacular flash earlier, but it appears to have died down a little bit, that's just why I'm facing off in the direction of the oncoming storm. Let's listen once again for the burp sound. There it is. He's right here. I've been struggling to try and find a Scops owl for you to show you guys. I'm just going to try and get a little bit closer. You never know in those last few moments if you might catch one out. And with 3 minutes to go, we're right on the border, but he's somewhere here. I almost had one to show you, but he flew past me. He's somewhere here. And the thing is, you need to keep stopping and listening each time to try and hear him. I think he's moved off into quite big trees just off there. Well, an unsuccessful afternoon in terms of actually locating both Shadow and Karula and trying to figure out what's happening on their side of the world and where they are. As to where Shadow disappeared to, I'm not too sure. I stopped and I listened all along the drainage line of that block. The reason that I didn't try and walk through was the track showed that she was walking really, really fast. And I honestly just don't know which way she went or where she disappeared off to or what she's doing at the moment. But hopefully by tomorrow morning we'll be able to follow up and work out exactly where she's gone. One of those interesting things as we go through periods of droughts in terms of leopard sightings, or certainly I have at the moment, and I must surely be on the way to seeing a couple of leopards soon. My luck must be about to change. I'm sure that they are around here somewhere, just much like those scops owls who are fluttering around and making plenty of noise but remaining completely out of sight and unfindable every time I search for them. And anyway, it was wonderful to share this hot afternoon with you all and to hear your questions and your comments. And I do hope that you have learned something, as always, from our live safaris. And as usual, a big thank you to the wildebeest, not only for his brilliant camera work, but as well as his spotting skills. And a big thank you to Tara and Kirsten FC and Alex for all of his technical genius. Now, it's going to be an interesting time in the months up ahead. I cannot wait to relocate Shadow and see how she's doing. And you're just going to have to stick with us if you want to follow up on the stories of all of these wonderful leopards. So from myself and the WildEarth team, a big thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and we will see you for the sunrise safari tomorrow morning.